Good afternoon and welcome to today's Data and Marketing Association webinar brought to you by DMA's email marketing arm, the Email Experience Council, or EEC. Today's webinar, How Brands Are Using Data to Drive Better Email Engagement and Higher ROI, is sponsored by MessageGears. I'm Jocelyn Argren, the EEC Director of Education and Events. DMA and the EEC are proud to support informative events like today's webcast. If you would like to learn more about DMA, please visit thedma.org, and for more information about the EEC, visit emailexperience.org. Please make sure to join the conversation and contribute any questions or thoughts you have by using the question function found on the right-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to address all of your questions at the end of today's session. The speakers' presentations and comments represent their own viewpoints and do not necessarily represent the views of the DMA or EEC. We hope that you enjoy today's webinar. Joining us today is Roger Burnett, CEO of MessageGears. With that, I turn the presentation over to Roger.
Thank you so much, and thanks for everybody for joining in today. Very excited to talk about data-driven email marketing, and how we can use data to drive better engagement, and ultimately why we're all in this business, which is to drive higher ROI. I'm CEO of MessageGears, and been in advertising technology, marketing technology industry for over 20 years. And having a lot of fun working with very talented people here at MessageGears. So today we're going to talk about data-driven email. And it really is all centered on the consumer, of course, and what's really happening at the consumer level. Consumers are expecting more personalization. No longer are they, pleasantly, surprised and delighted when they get personalized marketing. It's the norm now, and it's what's expected, and companies that aren't doing that are really falling behind. And this is particularly a challenging topic for enterprise email marketers with larger data sets and perhaps more stringent privacy concerns. So given that backdrop, we're going to talk about some proven strategies for personalization and how to implement a data-driven model. And finally touch on some new tech that's helping to empower marketers to accomplish this. And with time permitting, we'll have some Q&A as well. So let's dig in. So first we're going to talk briefly about the consumer. What's really driving a lot of these challenges for marketers is the fact that the consumer is always connected and always connected on multiple devices. And we all know this, but we use a computer at work. We use a phone to access information on the bus on the way home. We use our watch to pay for our Starbucks, between the bus stop and the house or our apartment. And, we kick our feet up on the coffee table and read our tablet while we're watching TV in the evening. And as we're interacting with the brands that we frequent, the brands that we love, we're expecting those brands' messages to be consistent across all of these channels, and that's very difficult. And not only to be consistent across those channels, but to be relevant based on the device that we're viewing the content. And so it's the difference between the consumer feeling like they're having a dialogue with a brand, one that's personal for them, in which case it doesn't feel like advertising. It feels like the brand's doing you a favor, versus the consumer feeling like they're being advertised or pitched to, if it doesn't feel personalized, and that's when you dramatically lose engagement. So we need happy customers, and that's what we're going to be talking about today: is how to get personalized messages to the inbox of your clients and prospects. So why is this challenging? And what are the specific challenges? Well, we commissioned a study from Ascend 2, an email marketing research firm, and For enterprise marketers, we asked what was the most important goals of email marketing strategy. And again, not surprisingly, the number one goal was improving email personalization. So that's certainly right, aligns with our narrative, certainly as a company. We'll talk a little bit more about MessageGears later, but also, in our presentation today. 2, 3, and 4 I thought were very interesting, though. Improving customer retention, increasing engagement rates, increasing customer acquisition. All of these were secondary and tertiary goals. But what's interesting is if you improve your email personalization, you're going to have better retention. You're going to have increased engagement. So I think they're all really aligned with the top item. So the next question was, well, if personalization is the most important goal of success, well, what are the most significant barriers to achieving success? And improving personalization was number 2, very near the top of the biggest issues. Number 1, interestingly, was enriching contact data quality. Well, if you have better data in your CRM, you're going to have better personalization as well. So again, all of these things are intertwined and at the top of mind for enterprise marketers. So what are some strategies for personalizing this content and making it relevant? And then we're going to get to how to overcome some of these barriers a little bit later. So, one of the things when the relevancy group asked a group of enterprise email marketers what data they found most valuable, it was an interesting mix of items. Demographic data was very important, customer satisfaction surveys, customer lifetime value, customer spending, and their behavior patterns in terms of how they spend money with different brands. An interesting mix of both, external data as well as behavioral data, kind of trigger-based data. And then once you have this data, how do you most effectively personalize emails based on that? And this was really interesting and probably how I would rank order actually these in importance. So the number 1, according to marketers, this is back to Ascend 2, marketers said the most effective personalization tactic is behavior-triggered emails. The second most is individualized email messaging. And third most is email list segmentation. Then we're going to go through some responsive design and preference centers and some different things as well. But I would tend to agree with this list in terms of order of importance. Behavior-triggered emails really does make a lot of sense to be the most, potentially the most impactful type of personalized email that you could send to a prospect or client. And it's really because these are the types of emails that are triggered based on a particular event. Almost all of these behavior-triggered emails, the customer is actually awaiting the email, and we'll open it to make sure their item was shipped, or that their credit card went through, or that their tickets became available. So, and I won't list all of these, but some other things like flight statuses, shipment notifications, cart abandonments. All of these things, customers will almost always open these emails. Incredibly high open rates because they're very timely based on something the customer did. And marketers, if they don't look at this as an opportunity to sell product, are really wasting one of their most engaged moments with the customer. Now, the opportunity should be relevant. It should be a free shipping on the items in the cart that was abandoned, or for a flight status update, a car rental opportunity, or things like that. But because again, it needs to feel personalized and relevant to the customer in the context. But there should always be an opportunity to sell in these types of emails. Individualized emails was number 2 on the list. And so while behavior-triggered emails is very reactive to an event and extremely timely, individualized emails, while personalized or more proactively sent by a brand. So let's look at some examples here. Like here's an email from Orbitz. Orbitz will send flight suggestions based on most likely destinations that a customer has flown with them in the past. Will send deals for hotel brands that they have entered in loyalty numbers with. And again, to make it very personalized and more likely for them to open and interact with it. 1-800-CONTACTS will send out emails for offers based on the specific lens prescription that they know you have if you've ordered from them in the past or filled out a form in the past. Time those emails based on when they know you need new contacts or you're due for new contacts. And so those types of things certainly get prospects to be more likely to engage. Again, they're very individualized based on data on the individual CRM record for your customer, but they're proactively sent. Audience segmentation is the third. It's the third item. So let's talk about an example of how to segment an audience. So I like this pretty simple example of maybe an outdoors retailer that wants to send a phishing email to their prospects. Well, if you're in late February and you're fishing in, let's say, the southeast United States, you might envision something like this. But if you're in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, you're going to be fishing on ice. But if you're in South Florida, you're going to be in shorts and out in the ocean. So just targeting users based on phishing would not get the job done based on personalized content without being wildly too broad. So you need much more information about not only that somebody might be interested in phishing, but where they live and something that would be most germane to their interest based on their likelihood to engage in those types of activities. So the audience segments, the more granular you can get, the more powerful it is. The more granular you can get, the harder audience segments are to manage, because you can imagine quickly, audience segments across hundreds of categories if you get this granular going to hundreds or even thousands, which is why we would highly recommend going more down the individualized route. But audience segmentation can be extremely powerful if done well, and in certain use cases makes the most sense. Responsive email design is, I would say, a fundamental strategy that sits underneath all of the types of emails we just described. A remarkable stat is 56% of emails opened today are opened on mobile devices, which is astounding to me. I guess I'm an old fogey and I still like to read my email on my computer, but I will glance at them on my phone and read them in detail on my computer, but I think I'm giving away my age here, because clearly I'm not in the majority. And what's even more telling is that 80% of users say that if email is not pleasant to look at on their mobile device, they're going to delete it outright. And so all the hard work that you went into getting your data aligned, targeting your customer, giving them the right message is all naught if it looks good in a browser or even in a on a tablet, but doesn't look good on your smartphone. It's likely to get deleted. And so making sure that your email is responsive across all the different devices is probably one of the most important things you can do as a marketer. And then finally, this should be obvious, but too many clients don't have, too many brands don't have self-managed preference centers. Too many emails is the biggest reason that people unsubscribe from brand marketing emails. And so make it easy for them to put their preferences in. When they only get emails on things they're interested in, let them go back from an email a day to an email a week. And they're much more likely to stick with your brand. And put a big link at the bottom of all their emails to make it obvious that they can do this. So that should be table stakes, to be sure. Another item that we've found to be really important for brands, especially our global brands, is a statistic put out by the Localization Industry Standards Association, LISA, as I like to call it. So LISA, put together a report that had a really interesting stat that said for every $1 you spend on localization, you get a $25 return, which is a crazy number, but it really makes sense. And localization is not just around translation, although that's really important, obviously. But it's not just language translation. Maybe a good way to describe it is cultural translation as well. Local copy in England, is different than copy in the U.S., for example. And so being culturally relevant, if you're selling chips in the U.S., they think you're selling potato chips, and in England, they think you're selling French fries. Potato chips called a crisp there. So, two countries separated by a common language. But that's just one example of being culturally relevant as well as language appropriate. And certainly the investments you make in this area, by and large, are going to pay for themselves many times over. And finally, engagement data is really important. It's some of the most valuable data that marketers will have that they can target content for their existing customers is how they've engaged with their website. This is first-party data. This is data you have on a property that you own, and understanding what the browsing behavior of customers on your site, the types of products that they're interested in buying, and the types of things you can infer about them based on what they've searched for on your website. Is some of the most critical and important data that you could have, and tying that together with a combination of data you might have in your CRM, like what somebody's interested in purchasing, along with where they live. You could have a particular offer on a particular bricks and mortar location, or other types of relevant information. So gather the data that you know and that you have locally, even though it might need you to tie together different data sets. So there's certain, I would call, core tenets around implementing a data-driven email strategy that should be absolutely foundational for all your programs. If you're thinking about getting into this and where do I start, this is less about a roadmap and more about things that you have to keep in mind to be successful. The first thing we've touched on is be consistent across all channels. And this is really hard, primarily because as the bigger your organization grows, the more siloed different channels tend to be. So a lot of organizations we work with, a lot of our customers, the folks that do the content on the website are completely different than the people that are sending emails. And even within, what we would call messaging, there's a brand we work with that the email team doesn't work with the mobile push team, for example, where sometimes they're very active together, sometimes they're not. So to have a consistent message across all the channels, you're generally going to have to work across departments to make that happen. So it's a little more work, but here's the beauty of it is if you do a good job of this, it's going to make everybody's jobs easier. People are more likely to click on the email if something in the title is relevant to what they surfed on the website the day before, and vice versa. You click on an email link and it goes to a piece of content on the website that's very relevant to what that person looked at on the email, to be much more likely for them to interact and purchase on their website. So this is something that takes a lot of work and coordination, but is absolutely worth it. Test and learn is really important. And I know it sounds kind of trite because everybody says, "Oh, yeah, I know testing is important," but it should absolutely be fundamentally part of your DNA for email, especially in a data-driven environment, because there's so many variables for you to test that you should always have a piece of some small percentage of your email that goes out where you're testing something new. I love a quote from Thomas Edison where he says, I haven't failed 700 times. I've succeeded in learning 700 ways that this won't work. And I think that's the right attitude to have. Certainly, at MessageGears, if we're not failing at things, then we're not trying hard enough. We're not growing hard enough. We're not learning new ways to do things. And that's certainly how we strive to work every day in terms of not only in our marketing efforts, but across all that we do. But in data-driven email, it's absolutely critical. This is table stakes for most of you, but again, we run across too many brands that run afoul, and we say follow the rules. It sounds very kindergartenish, And as this is the last day of school in the Atlanta area, my kids are very excited today. I should bring that up. That's probably why I thought of the elementary school nature of this. But it's really about follow the appropriate rules for email deliverability. Follow can spam rules. Don't buy your list. Make sure that you are doing what you need to do so as many of your emails as possible are getting into your consumers' inboxes. That's really what it is. And, so for 98% of you, you're not out to do anything nefarious, but if you're not careful about following deliverability best practices, you might get blocked anyway because, Gmail might think you are. And so companies like us, but certainly there are companies that specialize in deliverability can work with you on this as well. And then finally, making peace with IT. On any data-driven email strategy, by definition, you need access to your data. And IT owns the data. So the most successful brands in email that we're seeing today are brands where IT and the marketing department work hand in hand. Sometimes sit on the same floor in the same room. They have meetings about how to solve problems together. They have the same goals and are held accountable for accomplishing joint projects. The brands that are struggling more to accomplish this is where IT still sits in another building and still looks at the marketing group, alongside 5 other groups in the organization, and when you need something done, it's a ticket that comes in on Jira and it sits there for 3 days and it finally gets taken care of without any knowledge of what the complaint is and why. So work with your IT team, befriend them, take somebody from that group to lunch next week, put it on your calendar right now. It's important as marketers to work with your IT department to be successful in data-driven marketing of any type, but certainly for email where your internal data is so important. So finally, what kind of technology can empower you on this data-driven journey? So this is your roadmap that you should follow. In all seriousness, this is Scott Brinker, I believe his name, Scott Brinker, runs Chief Martech, and he puts out this now infamous, slide about all the different marketing technology companies. There's 5,000 companies on here, broken down by broad sector. And I'm very sympathetic to marketers on this call that are overwhelmed with the number of vendors that. A lot of them kind of, even though they do very different things, they sound the same and use different buzzwords, or if they do the same thing, they use different words to describe it, and so they sound differently. And it's really difficult to navigate. So, so I would focus on the most important things. As you're trying to think about vendors that are going to help you in this space, focus on the most important things and figure out the leaders in that space and talk to as many people as possible. Talking to your peers is one of the most effective ways to figure out who people have used in the past, who they like, who they don't like. That's kind of the easiest, no BS way of figuring out a short list of people you should talk to. Some of the subsets in this chart that I think you should really be focusing on in the coming quarters and years. Machine learning is a very big one. These are all subject line optimization that is done by a third party called Persata. And one of our clients, Expedia, uses them. They use machine learning and artificial intelligence to optimize subject lines based on, to get people to open and click, basically, with great success. Open time personalization is another burgeoning email category. On the left here is an example of an email that was sent by the Detroit Pistons using a technology called movable ink. And what's really interesting, this is the same email that was opened at 3 different times. You see updated game scores for, based on the time the email was open, and updated traffic around the Pistons Stadium, in Auburn Hills, around game time as well. Another vendor in this space called Kick Dynamic. This was interesting. The Washington Post would send out emails on election night, and based on when you open the email, it would have up to the minute election results. Two kind of interesting applications of load time content personalization that in certain instances can be extremely relevant and can help get people engaged with your email. And of course, testing tools, whether that be deliverability testing, whether that be, on the left-hand side is actually a screenshot from our platform about testing. We talked about making sure that your emails were viewable on different mobile devices. So viewability testing, all of those types of things are absolutely critical for success as well. The last data slide, I believe, or last set of data slides, I believe, are what marketers say are the most important elements to having a successful email program. And number one, access to customer data. This is put out again by the Relevancy Group, actually in a co-sponsored report that they put together, and they asked enterprise email marketers, number one, access to customer data. But when again you ask them the greatest challenge in building and executing email campaigns, number one is, guess what? Not able to leverage all marketing data. So most important thing, but not able to leverage all the data is the greatest challenge to being successful. So I'll just say that befriend your IT group. Make sure that you hone in on the technologies out there that are best for you. Come up with a strategy. Remember the underlying foundational pieces, and you'll be on the path to success. I do want to talk briefly about MessageGears. We exist as a company to help large enterprises solve the challenges that we just talked about today. We're an email marketing platform that really helps you remove the barriers that stand between marketers and the customer data. 95% of enterprises keep their CRM data locally behind their firewall, and either because of the size or the complexity of their data sets, because of the cost of keeping that data inside a marketing cloud, or because of PII reasons, or usually a combination of all those things. And so for the largest enterprises whose data is stored behind their firewall, we give marketers a very unique option to access their data locally for creating data-driven email campaigns, but still be able to send their emails cheaply at scale in the cloud. So it's really a hybrid solution that gets you the best of both worlds. A lot of the world's great brands use us and rely on us, and if anybody's interested in talking to us, we certainly would love the opportunity to chat. But that's all I have today. Will, if anybody has any questions, we'd love for you to send in questions. I'm sitting here with Will, who runs marketing for us. Will, have any questions come in already?
We've got some coming in now. While we're collecting them, what you mentioned some of the main reasons why, you mentioned IT and marketing kind of getting along. What are some of the main reasons why IT and marketing would not get along? Why is that always seemingly an issue?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and there's multiple facets to that. I mean, one is just general cultural differences, which I think is going away a bit as marketing becomes much more analytical in nature and less about wonderful creative and more about executing very data-driven endeavors. And that's across the spectrum, not only email. That the cultural differences between those two departments are lessening. But I think that's been the divide more recently. But I think that for the bigger organizations, they're just structured, the ones that aren't working well are structured in a way where those departments have a difficult time structurally working together. Their goals aren't aligned to solve the same problems. When IT starts to get, when a portion of the IT group is wholly dedicated to marketing and they feel like they're part of that team, that's when problems really get solved. I will say, to put in a little plug, MessageGears really helps grease the skids there and remove a lot of that friction. Our clients tell us that even though our product accesses data locally behind a firewall, that it actually requires about 50% less IT resources to manage for large enterprises, for our IT group to manage our product instead of one of the marketing clouds. Because there's no data to sync up to the cloud, you're just using your existing data where it lives. Not only do you have access to all your data, but there's dramatically less maintenance to do as well to get that data in a place that marketers can use it.
We had a question come in asking about the preference center piece, one of the top pieces of data there about unsubscribes. One of the top reasons people unsubscribe is that they get too many emails. And the question is that because people get too many emails in general, or is that that brand is sending too many emails?
That particular question would be the brand. I think that if people were unsubscribing because they got too many emails, they would probably take more drastic action across the board. But it all goes back to it's not. It doesn't feel like advertising if it's relevant and timely. And so there are brands that I just today I unsubscribed from. I bought my wife a Tory Sport tennis bag, and I've been getting emails every single day since I bought that a week and a half ago. And it's not timely and relevant when you get a daily email. And so if they sent me an email every couple weeks, then I might be more likely not to unsubscribe and then happen to see something in a couple months that my wife might love. But as it was, I was sick of receiving whatever their daily deal was, and I unsubscribed from all their emails. So it's very brand specific.
All right. And finally, Roger, are there any particular industries that you feel like would most benefit from like the data-driven approach? I mean, any particular verticals?
Well, certainly the traditional, I would say, kind of direct response verticals, travel, retail, financial services, automotive, the kind of clients that either has repeat customers, long sales cycles, or a combination. Those are the ones that you have the most individual consumer data about and the ones that are most relevant for the kind of data-driven approach to email. Some of those industries are particularly challenging, though, to use kind of the traditional marketing clouds, especially financial services that have compliancy about how to move data around customers' financial data, healthcare, healthcare insurance, HIPAA requirements about moving data up to a third-party cloud system. There's a lot of restrictions on that. So using a platform that can access your data behind the firewall becomes pretty critical in those cases in particular. But I'd say that the data that the industries that lend themselves to have the most rich set of individualized data for their consumers and prospects are the ones that are obviously most right for this.
Okay.
All right. So thank you guys so much, and I want to turn this back over to the capable hands of the EEC.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, Roger and Will, for such a really informative and fun webinar. We hope you found some useful tips on how to use data to drive better engagement and increase your ROI. I especially like the Lisa report, learning about that. And I did because I'm Lisa. I'm Lisa Brown-Shostak. I'm the director for the Email Experience Council. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the EEC. If you're not currently a member, we certainly hope you consider joining. We offer memberships and sponsorships to suit anyone's budget or professional needs. Membership does have its privileges. It's a great opportunity to knowledge share and network with your peers, participate in one of our subcommittees. We have awards, education events, marketing and membership and advocacy. And just wanted to give a little shout out to Will. He's a vice chair on our membership and marketing subcommittee. and also serves on the EEC's board, and we certainly appreciate his leadership at the EEC. If you do have any questions about our subcommittees, certainly reach out to me directly. I'm happy to help. We also offer access to some really awesome content. As an EEC member, you have free access to our online resources. I'd like to highlight in particular 2 EEC-produced guides. We have the Guide to Email Authentication, and we have the Global Email Marketing Guide. This covers anti-spam and data protection regulations across 77 jurisdictions. You can also further your education in email practices by attending or even hosting a local meetup, webinar, or coaching clinic. For more information, you can go to our website, sign up for our newsletters. The link is provided on the slide. It's emailexperience.org. Or again, I'm always available. You can reach out to me directly. Next slide, please. Okay, just wanted to mention our upcoming webinar next month, June 22nd at 2 p.m. We have a webinar sponsored by PostUp on how publishers can survive and thrive in treacherous times. You can always view and register for the latest EEC events up on our website. Again, emailexperience.org/events. If you have a suggestion for a webinar topic or want to see a meetup come to your area, you can contact us. We'd be happy to hear from you. Next slide, please. It's never too early to start thinking and planning about your next email marketing conference. We are returning to New Orleans April 4th through the 6th. We hope for those who have attended that you enjoyed this year's conference. We certainly look forward to seeing you come back again next year. Thank you all for listening in today, and thanks again to Roger and Will for such an informative webinar and providing us with all the ins and outs for boosting your ROI with email marketing. We will be sending out a link to the recording and a link to the presentation within the next day or so. This concludes our webcast. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.